Innovation transforms the world, turning the status quo upside down. Innovation created a healthcare system that not only improves the lives of veterans, it transforms the lives of healthcare professionals with unique opportunities to work with industry thought leaders while serving our nation's heroes. The Department of Veterans Affairs, where innovation ensures those who served our nation are served by the very best. See how a career at VA can transform your future.
Well, good morning and welcome to another episode of Talk About It Tuesday. It seems like it's been such a long time since I've been with you guys, so I'm really happy and excited. Happy New Year. We're going to get into the questions of today, HR, and let's go ahead and talk about it. We have many questions that have come in for today's episode, and I want to go ahead and start with a question from Lisa Freeman. The question says, once referred to the hiring manager, are you informed if you're not selected for an interview? Well, Lisa, thank you for that question. I think your question is great. Yes, you are informed if you're not selected. During the process of applying for a job, the VA has 4 touch points where they notify you about the application process. Once, when you submit your application, you should receive a notification that your application was received. When you qualify or not qualify, you should receive a notification that you were qualified and referred. Or if you were not qualified for the position, they'll let you know that you were not qualified. And they also let you know if a person was selected or not selected for the position. And there's also a fourth notification, and that's if you are selected for the position, they'll let you know when you need to do the paperwork in order to start processing in. So I hope that answers your question, Lisa. We now have a question from Dean Hannon. It says, are there any jobs that are built into special status for children of veterans that ever become available? Thank you for your question. And we get this question often from family members of veterans. And they ask if there's a special status for the children. The only time that there are a special consideration for children of veterans or spouses of veterans, they have the veterans preference for those veterans who are 100% disabled and unable to work. And that way they can use that the 100% disabled veteran to actually apply to jobs. And there are some instances where the children are able to do that as well. But that's not something that's offered to all children of veterans. It's just a certain application process for 100% disabled veterans who are unable to work, where certain family members are allowed to apply for positions, but it's only one family member at a time. Okay? I hope that answers your question, and thank you again, Dean. I have Destiny McGee who has sent in a question, and her question is, she's seeking interview tips for what makes you the best candidate for the job. Oftentimes people get that question and they get tripped up. So thank you so much for that question, Destiny. And how I would answer that. What makes you the best candidate for the job? Only you know that. When you think about the job that you're applying to, the first thing you want to think is, why am I applying to the job? Why do I feel that I am the best for the job? So then if the interviewer asks you that question, you should prepare in advance. Think about what it is that you do, what it is that you bring to the table, what it is that you will bring to that organization that will enhance it. What are your personal qualities that make you the right person for this particular job? If you think about that in advance, when the question is presented to you in an interview, you won't get tripped up. So I say, always prepare for questions like that. Write it out. Think about it. Sometimes you have to write it out and then read it to yourself. Does that really sound like what I want to say? Does that portray who I am? Does that portray what I will do for the organization? So I always say that's a practice question. Practice that only you know yourself and what you bring to the job. I hope that helped you, Destiny, and I hope that it also answered your question. I have a question from Billy. It says, I recently applied and went back to add a document to others. And I'm assuming that he applied in USA Jobs. It shows I reapplied with new documents, but for some reason, the third document doesn't show when I check my application status. Can I submit manually if position is closed? Thank you for your question, Billy. So, to answer your question, can you submit documentation manually after a position is closed? The answer is usually no, but sometimes it's yes. If you are a 30% or more disabled veteran, there's a possibility that you can submit additional documentation for the position. But otherwise, that answer would be no. Once a position closes, then you're not allowed to submit documentation. But because 30% or more disabled veterans have that special status, they can apply outside of the job closing and submit a complete application to be included into the process. I hope that answers your question and gives you what you need to apply in this position. Let's go down to the next question. I have a question from Susie. And Susie is asking a question about nurse practitioner. She said, is there a nurse practitioner mental health program? Well, the VA does not have a program specifically for nurse practitioners' mental health, but we do have positions that are open in behavioral health and mental health where we do utilize nurse practitioners. But a specific program, no, we don't have that specifically. I would say that if you're going to apply to nurse practitioner positions, look to see that it is in mental health or behavior health. Okay? Excuse me just a second. I think I have to cough. Excuse me. I'm back. So I also have a question that came in for someone that's anonymous. And their question is, are there programs similar to the HR Star for social workers? Maybe you don't know what HR Star is. Let me explain that to you. That's a new HR program that we've started, where we're bringing in HR specialists starting from the GS7 up to the GS11 and sometimes GS12 grade, where it's like an intern. It's an internship program. Now, HR Star just started last year, and we are going to be rolling out some other models that are modeled behind the HR Star. At this current time, we do not have one for social workers, but be on the lookout. We don't know what's coming next and when it's going to come, but I do know that VA is working on other models, just like the HR Star program, to see if we can bring in that talent that we need to have these various specialties working within VA. So keep your eyes open. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Anonymous. The next question is, what is the process to transfer from one VA to another VA in another state? And how long does it take to transfer? That question came in from Ranu. And Ranu, I want to answer your question the best way that I can. What I want to say to you is that VA does not have an actual program where we can just transfer someone from one VA to another VA. What you would have to do is apply to the position. Now, there are some instances where a transfer may be able to occur, but that's not the standard for VA nationally. The national standard is that you will apply to positions. So as far as how long that can take, it depends on the actual facility that you're going to, because they have to, number one, agree to take you, after you apply to a job, select you, and then the process begins with the background checks and then referring you over, moving you over to another VA. Depends on what job you're in and what job you're going to. So there are variables in there that won't allow me to give you a specific time. But I hope that I helped you to understand a little bit about transferring from one VA to another VA, whether it's within the same state or another state. I hope that answers your question, Ranu. Nicole Best asked the question: is there special wording on USA Jobs to search and find remote management or consulting positions? Well, Nicole, what I would say is that if you're looking for something remote, if you're looking for something in management, you have the opportunity to use keywords. And I would put those keywords in. I would put remote as one, and another as management, and also as consulting. And when doing that, that will bring up jobs that are remote management and remote consulting. And hopefully, you will find that job that fits you perfectly. We'll have you in VA or another agency someday. So, thank you for that question, Nicole. Mark, it says Mark Granda. I think I pronounced that correctly. He says, I'm currently in a master's clinical counseling program. How can I apply for an internship to get my clinical hours to work towards licensure? Hmm. Thank you for the question. So, your master's in clinical counseling. What I would say for any internship that you're looking for, VA does have several internships. Go to the VA, the va.gov, and just type in internships and see what internships come up, and then apply from there. Now, you may be able to contact the VA nearest you. If you're trying to get into VA, you may be able to contact the HR at the VA nearest you to find out if they have some clinical counseling programs that are outside of the internship program. There may be something that you can do in a volunteer position outside of an internship, and they may be able to answer that question better for you at that VA that's located closest to you. So again, I thank you for that question, Mark, and hope that I've helped you and others who are looking for internships within VA. Always go to va.gov. You can even go into vacareers.gov and see what it is that the VA is actually offering. See what programs we actually have out there. And hopefully you can find the program that works for you, that fits you, that will help you get into our system and help us take care of America's veterans. Those are the questions that I had that came in earlier. Let's see if we have anything in the chat. And we do. So I have a question that came in live from Karen. It says, for employed VA staff with disabilities, are there internal resources and support for VA career progression? Thank you, Karen. Now, if you are, whether you're VA staff with disabilities or if you're someone who's applying with disabilities, always remember that there's the Schedule A process. The Schedule A process allows people with disabilities to apply to various jobs, to apply to different jobs and be selected for those jobs. It's a different hiring authority than just applying directly through USA Jobs. And it is specifically for people with disabilities. As far as an internal resource, there's really not much more than what we have for all employees, Karen. And I hope that that helps you. But if you're looking for anything specific to your VA, I would say to go to your education department, go to your HR department, talk with them to find out what specifically they may have at that facility for you. And I hope that answers your question, Karen. Thank you. I have a question from Gadbo. I think that's how you pronounce that. And I apologize if I mispronounced it. You asked if you can skip GS levels. Can you skip GS levels? Well, I'll answer your question like this. There's a possibility that you can. For example, if you are a veteran and you qualify for VRA, there's possibilities that you are able to apply to jobs and skip grade levels up to the GS11 grade level if you qualify for that grade level. For example, I came into the VA as a GS5. I was in VA for 2 months and a position opened up that was a GS8. Well, I was coming out of the military and the qualifications for the GS-8 I met, which was to have experience at the GS-7 for 1 year at the next lower grade level. Well, I qualified for that job because I was a veteran just recently out of the military. My experience qualified me for the job. So therefore, though I was a GS-5, I applied to that GS-8 because that particular hiring authority allows me to apply to various jobs up to GS-11. So I can be a GS-5 today, a GS-8 tomorrow. Next week, I apply and I could possibly be a GS-11. So there's possibilities. It just depends on the way that you're applying to a job. Now, if you are in VA, you don't have veterans preference, or you don't have another way to apply using your education or something like that, you're not going to be able to skip grades. You're not going to be able to go from a GS-5 to a GS-8. If the position is a GS-5 target 8, you'll have to hit every grade prior to that. You'll have to be the 5, the 6, the 7, and then the 8. I hope that answered your question. And if you have other questions about that, shoot me a message on LinkedIn, okay? The next question I have came in from Emmanuel, and it says, how does VA decide which positions are applicable for veterans preference? I'm not sure that I understand your question, but I will answer this way. There are certain positions that are set aside specifically for veterans. Now, those positions that are set aside specifically for veterans, number one is a housekeeping aide. I know that position is set aside specifically for a veteran. And how they determined that, I don't know how they determined that position would be the one. But that's the one specifically for veterans, and any veteran can apply to that position and be considered to come into VA. Now, all positions are not open to veterans preference. Your Title V positions, you can use a veterans preference for mostly any of those. That would be mostly your administrative and your blue collar jobs. I'll say that. So when you're looking at those positions, they may say that veterans preference applies. In Title 38, veterans preference applies, but it applies differently. Okay. So it just depends on the hiring authority. It depends on the job that you're applying to, and the legal ways that we qualify people for jobs. So, Emmanuel, I know I gave you a lot, but I hope that I helped you in trying to answer that question. Okay. Okay. The next question that I have that came in live came from Joshua. And your question is, how long does it typically take to hear back about a position? Joshua, thank you for your question. And I know this question is common for a lot of people, and a lot of people get frustrated because there is no real answer. It depends on the facility's workload. It depends on the facility's staffing of HR. We have a lot of people who apply for jobs. Just like you're applying for a job, also know that there are so many others in the country that want to get into a government job. And sometimes we may have upwards 300, 700 people applying to a job. That means that we have to touch every application. We have to look through all of those applications, ensure that we're doing what we need to do to qualify the person for the job. And those who do qualify, we have to then move them on to the selecting official, who then has to try to chop down, weed out how they're going to do the process of interviewing, because it's unreasonable to think that they're going to interview 300 people for 2 jobs. Okay, so there's a matrix that they come up with and that they use. So sometimes it may take a while to hear back about a position, but my hope is that you are hearing back about the position at some point. And if you think that the process is taking too long, it's okay. Look at your vacancy announcement and see who that point of contact is. Send them an email and just ask, hey, I'm just interested in finding out how long it's going to take before I hear something back. I applied on this date and I still haven't heard anything until this date. But be reasonable. Sometimes it may take anywhere from 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks before you hear something back about the position outside of hearing that your application was accepted. That's something that you should receive fairly quickly when you apply to a job, that your application was received. And then from that process to the next stage, it may take a little while. I hope that answers your question, and I hope that it satisfies you to a certain point, Joshua. Okay. Danielle, I see you asked the question. If you upload an unofficial transcript that shows graduation pending, but you've graduated, will you be disqualified? Danielle, to answer that question, you have your official transcript and it shows that graduation is pending. That means that you've completed all your classes. There should be a grade there. Now, if that is the case, that the grades have already been placed on there, they show your GPA and all that, the possibility of you being qualified should be great, that you should qualify for that position. Now, if you are qualified for that position, prior to being selected for the position, they may contact you. They may contact you to make sure that you have received the transcript that says that you have graduated. Because if the job calls for a college graduate is what will be needed for that job. Okay? So there's a possibility that depending on the job and depending on how you're coming in, there's a possibility that they can bring you up to a pending status and then ask you for your diploma or your degree to show that you have graduated. There's also the possibility, depending on how the job is announced, if it says specifically that it needs a graduate, if they're reviewing your application, you can be disqualified. So there are different variables depending on what type of job you're applying to. And I hope that answers your question. Okay, Shawnette, you asked a really good question. And that question is, how do I apply for positions for a VA medical building that hasn't opened yet? Well, Shawnette, I will tell you this. VA is growing by leaps and bounds, and there are several VA facilities that are being built right now. For example, I know that they're supposed to be building a VA facility in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, once they get closer to opening that facility, those positions are going to be announced all over the place. Okay. So once those positions start going up, that is when you'll be able to apply to those positions. Those jobs are going to be announced on USA Jobs. They're going to be announced on VA Careers. They probably won't have anyone working in the building where you can walk in and give your application. But what they will do is accept those applications online. So Shawnette, you and others who are looking to work in VA medical facilities that are currently being constructed, be on the lookout for those positions to be announced on USA Jobs. Just, I would say weekly. For example, if it's Jacksonville, Florida, I would just put Jacksonville, Florida, and it will usually show up the new facility, the name of the new facility, or to show those positions that are being staffed there. I would also tell people to look sometimes on Indeed, because the VA, we do advertise on Indeed, as well as you'll see things advertised on LinkedIn. There's a resource, a vast resource of places where you'll see vacancies announced, okay? Or they'll tell you that a position is open, go to VA Careers or go to USA Jobs. So be on the lookout for where these jobs are being posted. And when you know that it's getting close to that facility opening, because they start advertising it all over the place when a building is going to be opening, the new VA hospital, then you will start to apply for those positions. I hope that has answered your question. And I don't see any other questions in the chat. So if there are no more questions, we're going to go ahead and close this week's session of Talk About It Tuesday out. I thank you again for joining. Always remember that we're here to answer your questions to the best of our abilities. If you have other questions, always send your questions in on LinkedIn, and we will respond to those questions. We will get the answers for you, get the answers to you. I was telling the producers, I find it quite the honor that some of you have asked me to be your mentor. I'm honored. I'm deeply honored. But that's something that I cannot do. I appreciate you asking questions like that. But what we want to do is ensure that we get the questions that you have answered concerning applying to VA positions or any other questions you may have about VA. Remember, it's Talk About It Tuesday, and we're here for you. So until next time, you guys have a great day, great week, and look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great day.